Content warning. This video contains references to suicide. Vedek Bareil is on a promenade that looks deserted. It also looks heavily filtered, so we're likely in shenanigans territory. Let's hope so for the sake of whoever's been strung up. Kira's there too, playing a game of some sort, probably the spring ball they mentioned when he was here last, and helps him cut down the body. Bareil recognizes him as a monk by the name of Beck, but Kira corrects him and says the corpse is actually Bareil himself. Back to reality we come, Bareil having had an orb vision in what looks like the temple on Deep Space Nine, and he's clearly troubled by the result. The prophets may work in mysterious ways, but being shown a corpse and having someone say it's you probably isn't good. He's here visiting Kira, it seems, and by visit I mean squelchy-squirty fun times. Finding the opportunity for such things may be difficult in the future, as he's favoured to become the new Kai in a few days, Bajor finally getting round to replacing Kai Opaka. Perhaps there were some legal difficulties as a result of her both dying and still being alive. Bareil was her choice for replacement when the time came, according to popular belief, which should mean that he's a shoo-in. Kira's worried this will mean he'll have no time for anything else. He promises that won't be the case, which is generally the Star Trek version of assuring that it will. Time to throw a spanner in the works. Vexin, the Delphic douchebag, is on Deep Space Nine as well, and telling kids to honour the prophets in exchange for their love. Bareil takes issue with this, his reading of their religion being that the prophets' love is unconditional. Such disagreements will hopefully soon be settled when the people of Bajor decide which of them should become Kai, Vexin also being in the running. Kira joins in the conversation to basically call Vexin a massive arsehole and remind us of the time she tried to have Bareil killed. Their dispute will have to wait, as there's a disturbance nearby. A man bumps into another and tries to hurry away. He's not quick enough, as he's recognized by the first as a certain Cubus Oak. Oak, it would seem, was a collaborator during the occupation, and the first guy makes a great deal of noise to ensure everybody else here knows. That brings Odo, who recognizes Cubus Oak too. He was last known to be on Cardassia, but says he decided to come back home to Bajor. What a fascinating coincidence of timing, and certainly unconnected to he and Vexin looking at each other as he's arrested and taken away. We're watching with an orange tint again, which presumably means it's another orb vision. Bareil is the new Kai, which makes it a bit awkward when Opaka turns up. Not to worry, as she's offering words of encouragement. It's less encouraging when Beck, the dead monk from his previous vision, gives him a snake in a box. Opaka tells him he can't refuse, and the snake becomes a noose. That's enough vision stuff for now, so let's see how Odo's getting on with his prisoner. They're having a bit of a chinwag, the purpose of which is to explain to we viewers that Cubus Oak here was a member of the puppet government the Cardigans used when they were still around. Cubus says it was necessary to minimize the impact of the occupation, though he did pretty well out of it if he got to move to Cardassia afterwards. Odo says Gul Dukat considered him a favourite. That's probably one of the many reasons Kira has for not liking the guy. His sob story about being old and wanting to die on Bajor doesn't cut it with her. He personally stamped the approval for sending new workers to the mines. Mining jobs could be best described as having a limited employment duration, the end of which tended to coincide with the death of the worker. As far as Bajor is concerned, everybody involved with that government is a traitor, so much so that the judgment was enshrined in law. Cubus was banished in absentia quite some time ago, a judgment Kira thinks was lenient. To Sisko's office we go for a visit from Vexin. She's so desperate for power that she's willing to try and butter up the guy she called a soulless threat to Bajor. It's a waste of time, as he deflects all requests for anything that might influence the appointing of a new Kai. That's also why he's kept his mouth shut about Vedek Bareil. She might not have got what she wanted, but at least she's confirmed he'll be neutral. Perhaps that's all she came here to achieve, as the good news is she's leaving. The bad news, delivered to Kira by Odo, is that she's taking Cubus Oak with her. A call to ops prevents her ship from leaving, while Kira visits Odo to find out what the hell's going on. Cubus asked for a private meeting with Vexin, and after some talking and having a poke on Odo's computer, she told Bajor that she was personally giving Cubus asylum. Must have been something pretty important, and the logs suggest it was connected with Beck, the monk from Bareil's visions. Time for an info dump, and Kira tells us this Beck lad was implicated in telling the Cardigans about a resistance camp. The resulting ambush killed a whole bunch of them, including Kai O'Parker's own son, and Beck confessed to it in a suicide note. We push that all to one side when Vexin turns up to complain about her ship being held. Kira manufactures an excuse that could mean it's here indefinitely, forcing Vexin to include her in whatever's going on. Beck the monk, according to Cubus Oak, was not responsible for the massacre. He was just a middleman, and Vexin says the real traitor was Vedek Barile. This is clearly not an idea Kira is willing to entertain without any sort of proof, which is why Vexin wants her to be the one to investigate it. Accusations from a traitor won't count for much, and Vexin doing the same has the chance to be considered biased. Evidence coming from the accused's lover, though, that's ironclad if it's positive, and suspicious if there's nothing. Perhaps Vexin's ship being held back is what she was aiming for all along. A good start would be establishing what Cubus Oak knows, or at least says he knows. Beck, the dead monk, was just an intermediary, according to him, a conduit between the Vedek Assembly and the Cardigans. That communication with the Vedek Assembly was pretty intense just before the massacre, though he doesn't know with whom. What he does know is that Vedek Barile came here the day after the massacre and spent hours with Vec, much of the meeting conducted at significant volume. He didn't hear the words, but Barile left upset, and Beck murderized himself shortly thereafter. Cubus has filled in the blanks himself and says that means Barile was the contact, so Kira goes off to find a better explanation. Looks like Barile's back on Bajor, and Kira's giving him a call to find out what he knows. He denies involvement in the massacre, though is open about visiting the station and seeing Beck the day before he died. He's not open, however, on what they discussed, as that was a matter of the spirit, and he's bound to secrecy. Barile's carefully worded replies don't give Kira much to work with, so she's trying to brute force it with Odo by checking old communications logs. This was back during the occupation and the Cardigans wiped everything before they left, but a link has two ends, so Odo's checking with the systems on Bajor. Or not, as the logs in question have been locked. It's the sort of thing not many people have the power to do. In fact, that authority comes from nothing less than a Vedek. Deep Space Nine having a resident dodgy bastard might have caused one or two issues in the past, but it does have a few benefits. One of them is having access to a method of bypassing locks. Some banter convinces him to do it, and after flexing his professionalism at Odo's suggestion of how to get the job done, he gets to it and tells them to bugger off. The outside of Quark's bar is where Beck hanged himself, a venue that rules out it being staged given how many witnesses there were. Odo's impression of the guy was that he was a good man, something Kira immediately shoots down. Odo notes that judgment doesn't preclude him from being party to some pretty awful things, which may be a reference to Kira's former activities. Introspection can wait. Quark's back to let them know he's finished the job. It won't be of any use to them, though, as somebody's already deleted everything inside. When it comes to data, there's deleted, and there's deleted, so O'Brien's having a poke to see if there's anything recoverable. The outlook isn't good, but he does have another idea. Whoever deleted it would have provided a retinal scan, and although that's deleted too, checking the fragments of that data against known records might score a hit. Beeps and boops provide a slow reveal, but not a particularly unexpected one when you remember that there were only 2 Vedeks in the episode. We're watching some more orb vision, and Barile is the new Kai. Not everybody's chuffed about it, most notably Beck the dead monk, who blames him for his death. Kira's smiling, though, and brings him a gift from the prophets. Getting stabbed is quite a shitty present in my opinion, but at least former Kai O'Parker is there to offer comfort. The vision ends as Kira turns up for real. Somebody's moved the candles around on the temple set, so I guess we're on Bajor, and Kira's flown here to see him personally. She wants answers that he's not willing to give, and he tries to resist. She's not giving up, though, and persists in asking why he did it. The answer is numbers. The occupation forces knew about a resistance cell and were going to exterminate every village in the area, killing over 1,000 civilians. Trading fewer than 50 resistance fighters to protect them was the only choice. The betrayal of Kira's trust is as hard to swallow as knowing Vexin was right, and she leaves. Back on the station, Dax tells her she's had a call from Vexin. She calls back to deliver her findings and discovers it isn't necessary. Vexin simply wanted to thank her for completing the investigation, something she knows must have been done as Bareil has announced he's withdrawing from the race for Kai. She clearly fancies her chances now he's gone, though doesn't come right out and say it. All in all, the day has been complete bollocks for Kira, and it isn't helped by none of this making sense. She still believes Bareil is honourable and can't make sense of him covering it up. Perhaps another look at things will help. Kira's back on Bajor. The selection is complete, and Bajor's religious orders are now led by Kai Sin, the Delphic douchebag. She's at least magnanimous in victory and offers an olive branch to Kira, though there's a fair chance she poisoned the fruit first. It's Bareil Kira wants to see, of course, and he's surprised by her visit, or perhaps it's concern. She's found the truth, travel logs for Bareil that prove he was elsewhere during the whole massacre incident and only returned when he was summoned back after the event. Whoever Beck the dead monk was talking to during those calls to the Vedic assembly, it can't have been him. And that makes the rest easy. If he's covering for someone, that person must be important. More important than his bid to be Kai, more important than a risk to his reputation, and more important than Kira's respect. The only person that could be was Kai Parker herself. She was the one who revealed the location of the camp, killing her own son in the process, in exchange for 1,000 lives. The truth might be unpalatable for them both, but at least it redeems Bareil in her eyes. We'll leave them to pretend they're happy for Kai Sin, and worry about how she'll abuse her newfound power, until the next adventure. You remember back in the first season episode Battle Lines, when I said it was wasteful to remove Bajor's leading political figure in what essentially amounted to a throwaway episode? Yeah. Her presence here would have removed the need to shoehorn in who she is via orb vision for those who didn't know, but it would also have given us far more options to work with. A remorseful Opaka standing down because she can't bear the deceit anymore, but knowing the truth would fracture her people. Bareil trying to protect her and being implicated in the process. Vexin finding out about Opaka and making a deal to keep quiet in exchange for Bareil withdrawing, further reinforcing to the viewer what a power-hungry shitbag she is. This is all armchair coaching, of course, and the result of these ideas could have been utter bobbins, but I can't help feeling we trimmed off far too many branches of opportunity when we left her on the planet of Neverdie. We'll leave those ideas for now, though, and focus on what we got. To be fair to those involved, they still produced a decent episode, a little bit of intrigue with the potential to read a lot more scheming behind the scenes if you want to. Quite how much Vexin knew about the whole thing is open to interpretation, up to and including the return of Cubus Oak itself. He must have known the prospect of him setting foot on Bajor without any sort of identity check was absurd, so the story of him just coming back doesn't really work out, even before you add that he's a recognizable face of the occupation. It makes far more sense then if he already knew that he'd been promised amnesty. Take one step back again, and this could go deeper. Vexin might think she orchestrated this, but who would have given her or Cubus Oak data on which person to contact? It was only a couple of episodes ago where we were introduced to the espionage skills of the Obsidian Order, a body who'd certainly know which Vedek was most likely to use the situation for personal gain. The result of this contact between Cubus Oak and Vexin is a domino effect resulting in Bajor taking a whole different direction under a power-hungry leader. It's not like the idea of foreign powers influencing elections to place a corrupt arsehole in charge is far-fetched. From the political to the personal then, and a look at Kira and Odo. He's somewhat thrown when Kira says she loves Bareil, and that's presented in a way which could have very different meanings. Having done a little digging on this, it seems the writer of the story, Gary Holland, was surprised by how it was played. Whether that's because it was rewritten or because René Auberjonois took the performance in a different direction, I'm not sure, but this is widely regarded as the first hint of there being more going on. Regardless of the intent, it shows as a facet of Odo. When he meets something that makes him awkward or painful, he throws up a wall. Here it's highlighting the difference between them, referring to her as a humanoid and making observations on them as a whole. There's potentially a little bitterness in that judgment too. When it comes to emotional attachments, you never see the obvious. It's a great line. This is just one example of some nice touches in the episode, Bareilles' responses to Kira being another. He lies through omission. When asked if there's anything Kira should know, he deflects it by saying there's nothing which would satisfy Vedek's sin. That's not an answer to the question she asked, but close enough to sound like it was. We'll also give some points to Quark. Snatching up the case with his money in when he's surprised is a great bit of characterization, as is him chiding Odo when he suggests an inelegant way of breaking through Bajoran security. All in all, then, there's enough here to counter my sadness at Opaka having been written out of it. I still maintain that choice was wasteful, but those in charge managed to work around it. As another chapter of the ongoing plot arc, it certainly does the job more than adequately, giving us the rise of Kai Sin to a position where she can now do full-on Delphic douchebaggery with no comeback at all. End of episode.
Right then, O'Brien says we don't have a swimming pool, but there are containers in the ore processing plants that can do the job. You know, if you're willing to not think about all the people who carked it down there.
Good job. Maybe we'll leave the last bit out though. We don't want to scare off our first punter.
Fair point, mate. We'll just say the station has significant historical value and leave it at that. Any luck learning about the weapons?
I've got Quark working on it at the moment. It's behind Starfleet locks, so it shouldn't take him long.
I assume there's a good reason why you need to do that instead of using your own data. You know, what with you previously being the computer of a Starfleet ship and one that docked here to boot.
Absolutely correct. There is indeed an excellent reason.
Not gonna share it then?
I don't think that's necessary for plot advancement.
So yourself? Woof.